The story of Jaburudaya, the wisest fool in the village of Adama. Long ago, in the heart of a vast green land, lay the village of Adama. Adama was a simple place. Mud huts with thatched roofs, children running barefoot through the fields, and elders sitting beneath the big baobab tree, sharing stories from days gone by. But among the many villagers lived a man whose name was known far and wide, Jabarudia. Now, Jabarudia was called the wisest fool in the village of Adama. Why? Because he had wisdom that could silence even the cleverest elder. And at the same time, he could do the most foolish things that made everyone laugh until their bellies hurt. The dual nature of Jabarudaya. One day, the chief of Adama called a village gathering. He said, "My people, I want you to help me decide who shall represent our village in the great council meeting of all the neighboring lands." Many names were called, but someone shouted, "Let Jabarudaya go. He has wisdom like no other, and foolishness like no other too." The villagers laughed, but the chief agreed. So Jabarudaya prepared to travel to the council meeting. He put on his finest wrapper, tied a chicken feather to his hat, and carried a long stick that made him look like a prophet. But here was the foolish part. Instead of carrying food or water for the journey, Jabarudaya carried only a mirror. When people asked why, he said, "Whenever I feel hungry, I will look into the mirror and remind myself, 'You are Jabarudaya, the strongest man in Adama.'" The villagers burst into laughter. Jabarudaya at the council. At the council meeting, great chiefs, wise men, and wealthy traders gathered. They spoke of trade, of justice, of peace. When it was Jabarudaya's turn, everyone expected him to embarrass his village. But Jabarudaya stood tall, held his stick high, and said, "Great men, you argue about who is richer, who has more cattle, and whose warriors are stronger. But tell me, if a poor man dies and a rich man dies, do their graves not swallow them the same way? If a king sneezes and a beggar sneezes, do they not both need a handkerchief? If war comes, does it choose only the weak and leave the strong untouched?" The entire council went silent. His words sank deep into their hearts. One chief whispered, "This Jabarudia speaks like a prophet." Another said, "He is wiser than many of us here." So the council applauded him. But then, in his foolishness, Jabarudaya bowed so low that his chicken feather fell into the fire. The feather caught fire, and he began dancing and screaming, thinking it was a curse from the gods. The whole council roared with laughter. The foolish wisdom. When Jabarudia returned to Adama, the villagers asked, "Tell us, Jabarudia, what did you bring back from the council?" He lifted his mirror and said, "I brought back myself." For a man who truly knows himself has the greatest treasure of all. Some people shook their heads, thinking he was being foolish again. But the elders understood. They said, "Truly, a man who knows himself cannot be deceived by others." The final test. One season, famine struck the land of Adama. The rains failed, the rivers dried, and food became scarce. The people cried to the chief for help. The chief turned to Jabarudaya and said, "You who are called the wisest fool, what shall we do?" Jabarudaya thought long and hard. Then he stood before the hungry villagers and declared, "Let us plant not only in the soil but in the hearts of one another. Share the little you have. For a morsel shared between two hungry mouths is sweeter than a feast eaten alone." The villagers listened. They began to share yam, millet, cassava, and even water. Together they survived the famine. When the rains finally returned, Adama rejoiced. The happy ending. From that day, Jabarudia was no longer mocked as only a fool. The people still laughed at his silly mistakes, like when he once tried to milk a goat from the wrong end. But they also respected him deeply. They said, "He may be foolish in little things, but in great matters of the heart, Jabarudia is the wisest among us." And so, in the village of Adama, Jabarudaya lived happily, loved by all, a reminder that wisdom and folly often live in the same house. Moral lesson. Dear listener, remember this. Even the one you laugh at may carry great wisdom. Do not despise a man because of his flaws, for his strength may one day save you. And above all, true wisdom is not only in knowing many things but in sharing love, kindness, and unity with others. That was the story of Jabarudia, the wisest fool in the village of Adama.